What is going on, YouTube? So coming back today with my final mock draft of 2016 for the NBA. So this will be version 5.0. This is what I'm finishing off at. It's actually my 6th mock draft, but if you guys saw my last one, I said it was version 5.5. Today will be a full 2-round mock draft. So my first full 2-round mock draft, I will be giving you guys every single pick 1 through 60. I will not be giving analysis of every single pick because a lot of them are very similar or the same to my last mock draft. If it is the same, then I will not be explaining it too much. If you want to see that, you can go back and watch the last mock draft, or you can just say, oh yeah, that was the pick. So let's go ahead and start with the number 1 overall pick, and I got the Philadelphia 76ers selecting the power forward out of LSU, Ben Simmons. So Ben Simmons worked out for the 76ers today, and apparently they told him that they will be picking him number 1 overall on Thursday. I'm back and forth between who I think should be the number 1 overall pick. I still, to this day, to right now, think that Brandon Ingram will be the better NBA player if he can get above 200 pounds, if he can put on some weight. But as of right now, I think Ben Simmons is the best fit for the Sixers. I think Brandon Ingram is the best fit for the Lakers, and I think the way that would go down would be very beneficial to both teams. So my second pick, I have the Los Angeles Lakers selecting the small forward / power forward out of Duke, Brandon Ingram. So putting in Ingram to that lineup, that gives the Lakers a solid 4 of starting 5 positions. They would have Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, Jordan Clarkson, and D'Angelo Russell. Good foundation for the future, and what would hopefully be a resurrection of somewhat of the Lakers' greatness. I still think they're a center away. I think they need to pick up like an Al Horford or something like that in free agency. If they could do that, then they would. I think they'd already go back to playoff contention. Even with Brandon Ingram back, I think they will still go back to at least being a playoff contender. Not a championship contender, but at least for the playoffs. So at number 3, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the shooting guard out of Oklahoma, Buddy Hield. So this is the first time I have the Celtics not drafting Dragan Bender in I think like 4 mock drafts. It sounds like they're a little uncertain about Bender. It sounds like they want to add a little bit more scoring and maybe try to find a center or a power forward in free agency. Really all they're set with right now is Kelly Olynyk. I think that even with the other picks they have, they can go out and get a center. At least right now. I mean, it sounds like they do want to shop their picks to try to find a center, try to sign one in free agency. They're going to be, I think they're going to be pursuing guys like Dwight Howard and Al Horford pretty hard in this off season for free agency. So at number 4, I got the Phoenix Suns drafting the power forward Dragan Bender. So I don't think Bender will make it out of the top 4. Either the Suns or the Celtics will pick him up. Both teams need a big man very badly. And again, after the Porzingis success, Bender his draft stock still pretty high in my mind. So at number 5, I got the Minnesota Timberwolves selecting the point guard / shooting guard out of Kentucky, Jamal Murray. I've said this over and over again in my last couple basketball videos. I think that the Timberwolves need help they need help in the backcourt. I do think that they can be successful with Levine and Ricky Rubio in the backcourt, but I think they need one more player, and Jamal Murray could definitely be that guy. I definitely think that Jamal Murray in a 3-man rotation, obviously I think he'd be starting. I don't know who, but I think with a 3-man rotation with a guy like Jamal Murray, that'd be an extremely tough combination to stop. And the Timberwolves, I think, are very well set up to either land Buddy Hield or Jamal Murray. Either one I think they will be very successful with. So at number 6, I got the New Orleans Pelicans selecting the point guard out of Providence, Kris Dunn. Some people are saying that Kris Dunn will be better than John Wall, that he's like a combination both ways. I don't see that. I think he's going to have a little bit of trouble scoring his first few years in the league. I do think he will be an elite defender every single year in the league, though. Now, the Pelicans, they need help at almost every position except for the power forward or center spot wherever Anthony Davis is playing. For me, the Pelicans are probably going to be picking best player available at this point, and I think Kris Dunn is one of the best options for them available. So at number 7, I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the small forward out of Cal, Jaylen Brown. I like this fit. The Nuggets need help at the 3 very badly. Jaylen Brown is probably the best small forward in this draft outside of Brandon Ingram, and I think the top 7 that I have going right now, Brown, Dunn, Murray, Bender, Hield, Ingram, and Simmons, are the clear top 7. Excuse me. Some people have other opinions, but I think that would be the most favorite opinion for the top 7 if you could put together a top 7 for this draft. So at number 8, I got the Sacramento Kings selecting the power forward out of Washington, Marquese Kris. A player that has just one of the highest upsides in this draft. He's got so much athleticism. He is a very good player on defense. He has the ability to be an elite rebounder, an elite defender, and if he can get his mid-range shot a little bit more on point, then also a decent offensive player as well. He has the ability to be a very good player in the NBA. The Kings are going to need help at a lot of positions this year. Losing Rajon Rondo, really the most they have said is at the 5 with DeMarcus Cousins. I think if you put a guy like Marquese Kris alongside DeMarcus Cousins, if they get along well, that could be a really, really good combination for the Kings and could give them one of the best front courts in the Western Conference. So at number 9, I got the Toronto Raptors selecting the power forward / center out of Marquette, Henry Ellenson. Just, in my mind, a player that will be a very good offensive player in the NBA, would fit the Toronto Raptors scheme pretty well. They need a stretch 4 very, very badly, and he could be, I think he can be all that and more. They're a team that I think is picking up a little bit in transition. I think they want to run a little bit faster, but having a guy like Jonas Valanciunas at the 5 is not does not encourage them to run fast. I'm not saying to get rid of Valanciunas, but they're losing Bismack Biyombo. They need a stretch 4 already, so I think this would be a pretty good fit. So at number 10, I got the Milwaukee Bucks selecting the power forward / center out of Kentucky, Skal Labissiere. I mentioned this already. I like the fit of either Labissiere or Domantas Sabonis or Jakob Poeltl to the Bucks. Either one of the 3 I think would fit very well. I think Greg Monroe is more of a 4 than a 5. Greg Monroe is very good at either position he plays, but adding another post presence for the Bucks, considering their struggles on the offensive end of the floor with just pure shooting, I'm not sure if Skal is going to be able to help that. He does have a pretty good, or at least he did when he was coming into college, a pretty good free throw stroke. I think he will improve heading into the NBA. His workouts have been pretty solid so far. At number 11, I got the Orlando Magic selecting the point guard out of Washington, Dejounte Murray. This would add some size to the Magic backcourt and a little bit better matchup for a lot of times on defense when they might struggle with Elfrid Payton. I think Elfrid Payton is a decent option long term, but I think he's more of a rotation point guard than a starting guard. And Dejounte Murray has a pretty high upside for the NBA. He needs a little bit of help for consistency, but he only spent 1 year in college and was one of the better point guards in college basketball. I think he's got the tools to become one of the better point guards in the NBA. He is kind of a high-risk, high-reward pick, but I think the Magic need a little bit of help in their backcourt alongside Oladipo to finally get that team going. They've improved their win total, I believe, every year over the past 4 years, but that's led to what was like a 12th place finish last year in the East, maybe 11th. So they still need a little bit of help to get over that hump. So at number 12, I got the Utah Jazz selecting the shooting guard / point guard out of Vanderbilt, Wade Baldwin. The Jazz could use a little bit of help in their backcourt. I'm not sure if Exum's the long-term answer at point guard. Trey Burke is also a decent option, but again, maybe not a long-term option there either. 2 rotation guys. Wade Baldwin has the potential to be a pretty elite player in the NBA just when it comes to his physical tools, obviously the wingspan being the most of that. If he can get his driving ability, his vertical quickness down a little bit more, then I think he'll be fine. His footwork needs a little bit of work. He'll probably never be elite in that department, but definitely a guy that has the ability to be a very good shooter and a very good scorer, and obviously has the tools to stick with really anyone in the backcourt for a defender. A guy that's seen his draft stock rise a lot in the last month, so I think that'd be a good fit with the Jazz. So at number 13, I got the Phoenix Suns selecting the small forward Furkan Korkmaz. Korkmaz, in my mind, will be a very good scorer in the NBA. That's one of his best draws. He's an athletic guy, pretty quick, plays well above the rim, and I think that the Suns need a little bit of help at the 3. The Suns, I think, need the most help at the 3 and the 5, and if they are able to land Dragan Bender and Furkan Korkmaz, 2 international guys, obviously high risk, high reward, but I think Korkmaz is a little bit less of risk of being a bust than Dragan Bender. So at number 14, I got the Chicago Bulls selecting the shooting guard out of Florida State, Malik Beasley. I've had him going to the Bulls in I think the last 3 or 4 mock drafts, so I'm not going to explain that one too much. I still think it'll be a good fit, though. I think the Bulls need to pick shooting guard with this pick. At number 15, I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the power forward out of Gonzaga, Domantas Sabonis. Maybe the best rebounder in this draft, also one of the hardest workers. Him and Kyle Wiltshire showed what Gonzaga was supposed to be doing all year in the tournament, and I don't think Sabonis makes it out of the top 15. I think 15 is the last place he's going to go. I was actually missing him in my mock draft 4.0, or I actually just missed him completely in my mock draft version 4.0. But the Nuggets are a team that needs help at almost every single position, and maybe except for the 5. Seems like they're pretty set at the 5 with Jusuf Nurkic and Nikola Jokic, but they could use a little bit of help alongside them with Sabonis helping out with rebounding a little bit. Excuse me. So at number 16, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the power forward out of Michigan State, Deyonta Davis. Again, one of the more high upside players, not a whole lot of exposure in college, coming out of college with only 1 year of experience at Michigan State. Now, I've said this a million times, the Celtics don't pick a big with their first pick. They're definitely going to have to with their second. I like the fit with Deyonta Davis to the Celtics. If they want to play 2 power forwards to start, I think Kelly Olynyk and Deyonta Davis would actually complement each other pretty well. Deyonta Davis more of a rebounder, not so much of a rim protector, but he's a little bit more of a rim protector than anyone else they have on the roster right now. A little bit better defensively than Olynyk, but definitely has a decent amount of upside offensively. He started showing at the end of the year that he can start developing a post game. So at number 17, I got the Memphis Grizzlies selecting the shooting guard out of Syracuse, Malachi Richardson. Again, I don't think Malachi Richardson makes it out of the top 20. It'll be very interesting to see how high he goes, or even if he makes it into the lottery. My last mock draft, I did have him as a lottery pick. Excuse me, sorry. Still feeling pretty shitty. But Malachi Richardson, definitely a guy that seems like a pretty sure thing in the NBA. He's a very hard worker. His footwork is very nice. He's a good slasher to the rim, even though he's not the most athletic guy. And has the ability to heat up from outside. I think if he gets a little bit more of a consistent outside shot, he could be one of the better three-point shooters in the NBA. So at number 18, I got the Detroit Pistons selecting the shooting guard / small forward out of Michigan State, Denzel Valentine. So it'll be, again, very interesting to see where Valentine goes in this draft. A lot of people think he's deserving of a top 10 pick. Obviously, AP National Player of the Year. It'd be weird to think that guy would make it out of the first round, but there is a lot of big red flags for Denzel Valentine. He's a huge defensive liability, not the most athletic guy in the world. He is a very good scorer. I can't even say pretty good. And he's got the ability to be the heart and soul of a team on offense, to really be that guy on offense. So at number 19, I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the center out of Utah, Jakob Poeltl. So some people are going to say this is a little bit late, and it probably is. But I can see Poeltl actually falling out of the lottery. Not because of anything he does, but just because some of the centers centers and power forwards are getting a little bit mixed up. When you're talking about, the middle of the first round is very power forward center heavy between, Poeltl, Ellenson, Labissiere, Sabonis, Deyonta Davis. There's a lot of them. So it'll be interesting to see where all those guys go. But again, Poeltl, a guy that is kind of an old school center, very good anchor in the middle, good rim protector, good rebounder, and will probably get you about 10 or 12 points per game, can be pretty effective on the offensive glass. So at number 20, I got the Indiana Pacers selecting the point guard out of Notre Dame, Demetrius Jackson. So this is the highest I've had Jackson go. Something about Demetrius Jackson and the Pacers feels right to me. The Pacers need a little bit of help at point guard if they do let Ty Lawson walk. Demetrius Jackson, one of the most hard-working point guards in college basketball this past year, also one of the best point guards available in this draft. He can slash. He's a decent scorer. He can facilitate, and he also works extremely hard on the defensive end of the floor. Can stick with a lot of the point guards in the NBA. So at number 21, I got the Atlanta Hawks selecting the shooting guard out of St. Joe's, DeAndre Bembry. Again, I like the fit. Hawks need help in the backcourt, and this is the same pick I had in the last draft. So again, I'm not going to explain too much into it. So at number 22, I got the Charlotte Hornets selecting the center out of Maryland, Diamond Stone. They lose Al Jefferson, and they pick up a almost now Jefferson copy in Diamond Stone. Needs a little bit of work. Again, same pick as my last mock draft, so not going to explain too much into it. So number 23, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the center out of Vanderbilt, Damian Jones. Now, this is an interesting one because I mentioned this before. Damian Jones seems like one of the more sure things as an offensive player, or as an offensive center, in this draft. I think the Celtics are going to need to pick up a guy like this that can come in and, be a force on the offensive end of the floor from day one. Kind of a defensive liability. He's not a guy that'll be a great rim protector for you, but he also has a pretty high upside. Coming out of the draft as a 7-footer, also a true freshman. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes and what happens with him in his first couple of years in the NBA. He's going to be one of the guys that I watch pretty closely out of this draft. So at number 24, I got the Philadelphia 76ers selecting the shooting guard / small forward Timothy Luwawu. Again, somewhat similar to Furkan Korkmaz, a guy that can play above the rim pretty well, a good scorer on the offensive end of the floor, a little bit athletic, and even though he's not the best on defense right now, has the potential to be a decent defensive player. I think the Sixers are probably going to end up trading one of these two picks. They have the 24th and 26th, or they might trade both. They said they're trying to trade up to number 8 or something like that. I saw that earlier today. And if they don't, they're going to need a little bit of help in the backcourt. They're going to actually a lot of help in the backcourt. They're going to need to pick up. They're going to need to pick up 2 guards or wings in this part of the draft because they pick up Ben Simmons. Even if they get rid of Nerlens Noel and Jahlil Okafor, they still have really no one in the backcourt right now. So at number 25, I got the LA Clippers selecting the small forward out of Baylor, Taurean Prince. A guy that fits the role of secondary scoring and defensive reliability pretty well. When you draft Taurean Prince, you know what you're going to get. He's not the most high upside player, but he's also seems like a pretty safe pick. I've mentioned this before, Taurean Prince. I can't remember if he was the Clippers pick. I've had him go into the Clippers in one of my drafts before. I can't remember if it was the last one, but anyway, they're going to need. I still think they need a little bit of help at the 2. JJ Redick's a solid option on the offensive end of the floor. Had a pretty good season, but he's not the greatest defensive player. I think they're going to need a little bit of help at the 2 and 3 spots. That is the weakest point of their starting lineup right now. I think Paul Pierce is done. If you know that for sure, definitely comment that below. I really can't remember. So at number 26, I got the Philadelphia 76ers selecting the shooting guard out of Michigan, Karis LeVert. Again, just adding depth to that backcourt. I really like the fit of a Timothy Luwawu, Karis LeVert backcourt. They can find a good point guard to play alongside those two. There's a pretty decent amount of point guards available in this set of free agency. I don't think they're going to be able to get Mike Conley, but if they are, then that's a good. That'd be a very good-looking team. Honestly, you take what the Sixers had last year, and then let's say they do get rid of Noel and Okafor. You're talking about a starting 5 of Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Timothy Luwawu, Karis LeVert, and Mike Conley. That sounds very enticing. That sounds like a team that's automatically a playoff contender in the Eastern Conference. So at number 27, I got the Toronto Raptors selecting the shooting guard out of UNLV, Patrick McCaw. Excuse me. So what happens with DeMar DeRozan this offseason is one of the biggest storylines in my mind. I think the Raptors are going to be the second favorite to land him behind the LA Lakers. I really do think he's going to end up going to LA. And obviously if that happens, they're going to need to find another option at shooting guard. Norman Powell was actually a very good option for them off the bench this year. Really heated up at the end of the season, and for a second-round pick, looks like an absolute steal. But who knows if that's going to be a long-term option? And he's better at the 3 than the 2. They do have Terrence Ross, and he can probably come in and start. But I think they need to find another option shooting guard if DeMar DeRozan does leave. So at number 28, I got the Phoenix Suns selecting the center out of UNLV, Steven Zimmerman. Again, I mentioned this with the Celtics. I think even if the Suns do draft Dragan Bender, they're going to need a guy to come in and play at center day one. Alex Len is not, in my mind, a starting center in the NBA. They can roll with Alex Len for a little bit longer. I still think he can be a rotation center. But Steven Zimmerman, to me, is a guy that even though he only spent 1 year in college, he is very NBA ready. I think this is a guy that fits the role of rebounder and transition center very well. I think he fits very well in today's NBA as well. He would give Eric Bledsoe a little bit of help on the boards. I think that's something that the Suns really need. So at number 29, I got the San Antonio Spurs selecting the power forward out of Spain, Juan Hernan Gomez. I've had them selecting Labissiere or Hernan Gomez in, I think, every single mock draft. I think the Spurs are going to get a power forward to come over and fill that spot that Tim Duncan's going to leave either next year or the year after that. Obviously, Tim Duncan's at the end or near the end of his career. At 39 or 40 years old, who Who knows how much effectiveness he has left. Really, it's tough to watch at some points this year. Still one of the greatest power forwards of all time, though. Anyway, draft and stash, I think, will be another strategy they use in this draft as well. So number 30, I got the Golden State Warriors selecting the power forward / center out of Kansas, Cheick Diallo. So they most likely will lose Festus Ezeli in this coming off season, and I think they're going to have to plug that hole at the 4 and the 5 spot. Diallo, definitely a guy a little bit shorter, can play small balls, very athletic, can play well in transition, but can still grab you boards, can still play in the post, can still be a good post presence, and I think that's a very good fit. One that I haven't really thought about too much because I haven't thought most drafts that he will slip this far, but I think this could definitely happen, and it's an intriguing fit. So at number 31, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the power forward out of UNC, Bryce Johnson. This would give him a very good option at the 4, a good rebounder and a great scorer on the offensive end of the floor. Again, I think the Boston Celtics need as much help as they can get in the front court. At number 32, I got the LA Lakers selecting the center, Ivica Zubac. Again, one of the higher upside guys. I love the upside of, I mentioned this before, the 3, Jochi, Ante Zizic, and Ivica Zubac. I think Zubac is actually the best of the 3, or the most NBA ready right now, and I do think he will be the highest pick. At number 33, I got the LA Lakers selecting the power forward, Gershon Yabusele. A guy that's pretty athletic, is a good shooter, and can be a good stretch 4 in the NBA. Again, a guy that could definitely slip into the second round, might be a late first round, early second round pick. And again, I think the LA Clippers are going to need a little bit of help at the floor, or a little bit of help at the 4, because who knows how much longer Blake Griffin's going to be there. So at number 34, I got the Phoenix Suns selecting the point guard / shooting guard out of Oklahoma, Isaiah Cousins. A guy that's a very good 3-point shooter, had a very good year at OU, was a good part of the supporting cast for Buddy Hield alongside Jordan Woodard also. And I think the Phoenix Suns still need a little bit of help with outside shooting. Isaiah Cousins could go into a backcourt right now that's actually pretty good with the Phoenix Suns. Could play behind Eric Bledsoe, and I still think could be a very good outside shooter in the NBA. At number 35, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the power forward / center Thon Maker. Now, a lot of people aren't going to agree with him slipping into the second round. Again, I think a lot of teams are unsure about his ability to transition to the NBA right now. Needs to add on a lot of weight, and even though his potential is, he might actually have the highest upside of anyone in this draft. A player that's 7'2" and has the ability to play shooting guard is unbelievable. Excuse me. But again, a lot of that's just potential. You throw him into the NBA right now, and he's not very good. I don't think he's NBA ready at all, and I think that's going to drop his stock a little bit. Again, Celtics I think are looking for a guy that can be a superstar in the front court, and Thon Maker definitely has that potential. So number 36, I got the Milwaukee Bucks selecting the power forward. Jesus Christ, I definitely forgot what school he's from. Let me look that up right quick. That's right, New Mexico State, Pascal Siakam. A guy that is an interesting situation, very similar to Ben Bentel. Not a whole lot of exposure while he was in college, but I also think a guy that's pretty NBA ready, will be a decent rebounder, can play well in transition, and again, that's something that's a little bit in high demand right now in the NBA. So number 37, I got the Houston Rockets selecting the point guard, Kay Felder out of Oakland. I like Kay Felder. I think he's kind of a Tyler Ulis copy. They're both very good for their size, both under 5'10". And the Houston Rockets need help at the point guard spot. There's no doubt about that. Pat Beverly, even though he is a decent point guard, very good defensively, I think they need another guy to come into the rotation and help out at the point guard spot. So number 39, I got the Milwaukee Bucks selecting the shooting guard out of Kansas. Wayne Selden. I don't think Selden has been getting enough credit in this draft. He does still have a very high upside. He was never really consistent at Kansas until his senior year, and that was a bit of a red flag. But this guy's got a lot of athleticism. He can play above the rim. He has a good outside shot, and he can slash very well. I think there's going to be a spot for him in almost every single rotation of any team in the NBA. At number 39, I got the New Orleans Pelicans selecting this shooting guard, point guard out of NC State, Cat Barber. Again, another very intriguing option for players in this draft. I think that he could be a late first-round pick even. Very good facilitator, good slasher, and I don't think he got a very big spotlight in college. Has had some good workouts, had a good combine, so I think that'll help him out with his draft stock. So number 40, I got the New Orleans Pelicans selecting the center out of China, Zhou Qi. This guy's got tremendous upside. I think out of those three centers that I've been mentioning, he has the highest upside, but he's also a rail right now. I don't even know. I think he's he's between 195 and 205. At 7'2", obviously he needs to put on some weight. He's got a 7'7" wingspan, so he's ready to be a star in the NBA for sure. Again, it's just about making that successful transition and really just being NBA ready when it comes time in about 3 or 4 years. I don't think he would come over immediately. I think he spent probably 2 more years in China. So at number 41, I got the Orlando Magic selecting the power forward out of Providence, Ben Bentil, a little bit overshadowed by Kris Dunn at Providence. He's a decent shooter. He's pretty good on both ends of the floor and definitely can sneak his way into the first round. Had a good combine, boosted his draft stock. 3 months ago, I don't know if he'd even be considered an NBA draft pick. So seen a little bit of a rise in his draft stock. At number 42, I got the Utah Jazz selecting the point guard out of Kentucky, Tyler Ulis. If he was about 6'1", 6'2", would be a first-round pick. That's been discussed a lot. Has the tools to be a very good point guard in the NBA, to be a top 20 point guard in the NBA, and who knows, that his size might not stop him. We'll just have to see. Again, his size is going to hurt him a little bit. Same thing with Kay Felder. I think they both will be early second-round picks. So number 43, I got the Houston Rockets selecting the center Ante Zizic. Zizic, a guy that needs to stay healthy. That's one of the biggest red flags with him right now. Has a very good jump hook, is also a good rebounder, and also plays very well above the rim. A guy that's ready to start more so than Zhou Qi right now, and I think will be able to come over about a year after he's drafted. So number 44, I got the Atlanta Hawks selecting the power forward / center out of France, Peter Cornely. A guy that I haven't watched a whole lot of film on, I'll be honest. A guy that I do know has decent upside in the NBA, a guy that will be an NBA draft pick, and a guy that is ready to come over almost immediately. So at number 45, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the point guard out of Oregon State, Gary Payton II. I think this would be a little bit of a steal of a pick. I think Gary Payton could actually end up being a very good rotation point guard in the NBA, and one day might even be able to be a starter. A guy that had a very good year at Oregon State, led that team to the tournament, and he's a very smart player. He's a good shooter, and even though he's a little bit of a defensive liability, I still think he knows what to do on defense and doesn't want to make himself invisible on defense. I think he knows his role and can maximize his value, even if he is a little bit weaker on the defensive end of the floor. So at number 46, I got the Dallas Mavericks selecting the shooting guard / small forward out of Virginia, Malcolm Brogdon. A guy that just because of his athleticism and a lot of people thinking his game won't translate well to the NBA, his draft stock has fallen a little bit. Actually, I think it's risen more than anything in the last couple months, but when you look at his college stats and the fact that I believe he was a first-team All-American, that you would imagine he would be a first-round pick again. Not that high level of athleticism. He's a good scorer. He's okay on the defensive end of the floor, but I think a guy that's actually a pretty high-risk, high-reward pick in my mind. I know a lot of people wouldn't think that way, but also seems like he'd fit in well with the Mavericks. Just seems like the type of player that the Mavericks would draft. So number 47, I got the Orlando Magic selecting the center out of Purdue, A.J. Hammonds. Good scorer down low, a guy that's very NBA ready, very polished, and I do think he could even make it as high as being a first-round pick. I think the Magic could definitely use some help in the front court alongside Vucevic. And Hammonds is a guy that can come in and fit into the rotation from day one. At 48, I got the Chicago Bulls selecting the power forward out of Maryland, Robert Carter. A guy that's a very athletic power forward, a very mobile power forward, and I think a guy that can be a steal in this draft. I mentioned this already, the Bulls are going to need help at the power forward spot when Pau Gasol leaves. They already need help at the 4 and 5 spots. Joakim Noah is going to be gone too, so they're just going to need help in the front court in general. Taj Gibson really the only one left. And they also got Bobby Portis that will probably have to step up next year as well. But adding in another guy that can be a depth guy in the rotation. And like I said, a little bit of a steal in this draft. Was overshadowed, I think, by Melo Trimble and Jake Layman at Maryland. But I definitely think a guy that could fit in well with Chicago. So at number 49, I got the Detroit Pistons selecting this shooting guard / smaller forward out of Syracuse, Michael Benajay. Benajay, a very versatile player. Was a very good rebounder at Syracuse, a very hard worker, and also has a decent mid-range game. And I think that the Pistons could definitely use a little bit of help, a little bit of depth at the 2 and 3 spots. Guy that, like I said, is very versatile, can play at either spot, and can back up KCP and Stanley Johnson. They don't have much depth behind those two. So I think it would be a good fit, especially for the 49th pick. Very good value pick. So number 50, I got the Indiana Pacers selecting the power forward. Oh my God, I'm forgetting this guy's school too. Let me find this right quick. I want to say Weber State. Yeah, Weber State. Joel Blomboy. Again, player that's a very good post presence even for being a power forward. Maybe a little bit undersized for the NBA, but being 6'9" and a power forward, that definitely still works in the NBA, especially nowadays. Pacers, I think they're going to end up letting go of Lavoy Allen. They're going to need a little bit of help in the front court. Miles Turner and Jan Mahimi. If Jan Mahimi stays, will be the starting front court for next year, but they're going to need a little bit of help behind them. So at number 52, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the power forward out of Notre Dame, Zach August. Again, just adding more depth to the front court. Not much more to say about that. So at number 52, I got the Utah Jazz selecting the shooting guard / small forward out of UConn, Daniel Hamilton. For a wing player, he is pretty big. Can defend probably could defend most wings in the NBA. Decent player on the offensive end of the floor. I think that it'd just be a good depth player for the Jazz, who are probably just looking at like best player available at this point in the draft. Number 53, got the Denver Nuggets selecting the shooting guard out of Seton Hall, Isaiah Whitehead. A very good shooter, was maybe Seton Hall's best player last year, and even though he looks like he's been in and out of the draft, definitely should be a NBA draft pick. Again, Denver Nuggets at this point, they have a lot of draft picks, so they're probably just looking best player available. So at number 54, I got the Atlanta Hawks selecting the power forward out of Kansas, Perry Ellis. Someone is going to give Perry Ellis a chance. The Hawks he could come in and be playing alongside guys like Paul Millsap, and if they do draft another, I didn't have him drafting another big, but could come in playing alongside Paul Millsap, and you know what, I think if anyone could help him transition to the NBA, even though he is already a very smart player, should be NBA ready, even though he might not have the tools for it. I think he could fit in as a rotation guy with the Atlanta Hawks, if any team. So at number 55, I got the Brooklyn Nets selecting the small forward / shooting guard out of Florida, Dorian Finney-Smith. Probably the best player on Florida's team last year. Florida team that struggled at times, just wasn't the normal Florida you'd expect. He's very athletic, unpolished it seems at the same time, a little bit inconsistent. Has the potential to be one of the better wings in this draft, but again, unpolished, inconsistent. So we'll see what happens. I think he'll be borderline late second round, maybe undrafted free agent. So number 56, I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the shooting guard / small forward. Again, I want to say out of UConn. I'm slipping right now. California, that's right. Tyrone Wallace. So good outside shooter. Again, will fit in more as a role player in the NBA. I mean, obviously most guys at this point in the draft will. But I kind of like what Cal had a very unique dynamic to their team last year. You know, Tyrone Wallace was a guy that fit in pretty well alongside Jabari Bird and Jordan Matthews and Jaylen Brown in the backcourt. Like I said, each of them provided their own value, and I think that whole dynamic will help Wallace translate to the NBA pretty well. So number 57, I got the Memphis Grizzlies selecting the power forward out of Iowa State, George Niang. Again, Grizzlies are going to need help scoring. And even though Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph are both staying, Randolph's getting a little bit older, and I think they need a little bit more help in the front court. Obviously, a team that ran into a lot of injury problems last year. I think they just need a depth player. A guy like Niang, I think, will be at least a decently reliable scorer off the bench in the NBA, can definitely play stretch 4, has 3-point range, and again, fits in well in my mind with Memphis, a team that plays smart and hard, and then kind of fit the same style as Iowa State. He was a guy that logged very heavy minutes last year and still was able to be an effective scorer. So number 58, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the center out of Arizona, Caleb Tarczewski. So Tarczewski struggled mightily with injury problems last year. Has the potential to be a good anchor in the middle. Definitely not a great scorer on the offensive end of the floor, but can be a good rebounder, can be a decent rim protector. And like I said, can fit in as probably a good rotation guy in the NBA. And I've got the Boston Celtics drafting a million bigs in this mock draft. So at number 59, I got the Sacramento Kings selecting the small forward / power forward out of USC, Julian Jacobs. A guy that's a good mid-range shooter in my mind, will actually be effective in the NBA. A little bit of a high-risk, high-reward pick, but at this point it's not really high risk for anyone. So I don't think the Kings would be losing out too much if he ends up not doing too much in the NBA. California kid that gets to stay in California and gets to, like I said, the Kings need help in almost every single position, so getting to play the 3, I think this guy could fit in as a good rotation player with the Kings. So number 60 at the Utah Jazz, selecting the shooting guard out of Wichita State, Ron Baker. Had a pretty rough year last year. I think someone's still going to give him a chance. A good outside shooter. And again, just adding more depth to a Jazz backcourt that I think needs a little bit of more backcourt depth to get that final push to get into the conference, or to get into the playoffs in the Western Conference. So that'll pretty much do it for this mock draft. Very excited to see what happens in the NBA draft on Thursday. We've been doing scouting reports, mock drafts, been talking about this for about 6 months now, so excuse me. I'm happy that it's about time, and then I will give you guys a draft recap as soon as it is over. I'm not sure what form I'll be doing a draft recap. I'm definitely not going to go through and give grades for every single time or every single team like some people do with the NFL and NBA drafts. But I'll come back with something similar to that. I'll think of my own way. If you guys have any ideas for it, definitely let me know down in the comments below. That pretty much does it for this video. I'll be posting the results of this entire mock draft in the description below, as always. I don't know who skipped ahead to the end, but if you want to see the results, you've already seen the entire thing. You just want to see what they were. And again, if people don't want to watch the entire video and they just want to look in the results, just look at the results and then see what my 2-round mock draft looked like without having to go through all the analysis and this 36, 37 minute long video, then that's fine too. That's pretty much it. See ya.